we've seen cops respond according to training multiple times with
Sure.
active shooter training, active shooter situations. In fact, we just saw one this week, unfortunately, again, in Oklahoma, where there was a shooting at a hospital. An active shooter went in and killed 4 people, sadly, but within 30 seconds of police confronting him, he killed himself, which is not an uncommon end to these sorts of attacks. And so it's important to not allow that shooter to free reign to go around. And in fact, I've interviewed another officer when I did my Faster Colorado training. One of the instructors in the firearms section is a Colorado police officer. His name's Quinn Cunningham, who responded to a school shooting and the way he described it to me is very much in line with everything I was taught and everything that I've heard from everyone else. I'll just give people a quick quote from the story. People can read more if they want to. This was published at the Free Beacon a couple years back. You can look it up, but Cunningham says, when something like that happens, pretty much the whole city comes. The whole metro area came. I was about 12th into the school, from what I understand. We went into the school and were moving through the hallways. It was me and 2 other cops who I'd never seen before. I don't remember what agency they're with, and I haven't seen them since. And we're moving through the school. And normally when we do scenario-based training for an active killer, there's a lot of discussion or distractions and a lot of fire alarms and role players and all this stuff, screaming going on. And it was dead silent, like deafening, distracting silence, to the point where it was, what's going on? Where are these kids at? And I'm looking at my watch, like, what day is it? And he says that was because they were so good at their protocols that they were all locked in their classrooms. Sadly, in that case, the shooter had already killed a girl and then had left. He was searching for a teacher that he didn't like, and he set the library on fire. And there was a lot, but sort of gets to the point of how you're supposed to react to these situations, how you're trained to do it, which is you go in immediately, you team up with whoever happens to be there at the same time you are, and you search for the shooter until you find them and neutralize them, right? Then you start helping other people, or helping the wounded, or that's the second line role. And it's important because these things can happen so quickly. A lot of the killing can happen very quickly, and so you got to respond quickly.
Yeah, I remember talking to Stephen Williford from Texas. He's the one who intervened in that church shooting, and something he said really stuck in my head. He said every time I heard another round go off, that was another one of my friends or neighbors being killed. And that's how, as a law enforcement officer, you need to view these situations when you get there. That's someone's kid, it's someone's mom or dad, it's somebody's loved one. When you talked about the chaos that he said he encountered, that's 100% true. We always tried to make the training as realistic as possible. So there was role players screaming and yelling. There was people, with blood all over them. The idea being, we want to see if we can distract them to stop, and render aid to someone, or stop and move something out of the way or whatever that doesn't need to happen. If the training is uniform as it should be, I've never seen, ever since we started doing active shooter training, I've never seen much of a variance in the training. It's all pretty much the same thing. And the reason that's important is, like he said, your officer from Colorado, he gets there, there's 2 cops, doesn't know who they are, what agency they're from. The good news is they've all had pretty much the same training, so they can form up a quick team and know what to do and how to do it. There's clearing tactics have changed. So, for example, on a search warrant, clearing a building, those tactics have changed 37 times since I started in law enforcement back in 1903. And so it's important that if you're working with another agency, if you're on a task force, for example, it's important that you train together so that you know how you clear buildings. There's a bunch of different ways to clear a building. The old way, where it's dynamic, where you kick the door and everybody runs around yelling and screaming, that's not really the way to do it anymore. It's more methodical. Same thing with active shooter training. It's important that everyone get roughly the same training, and I think they are. And I love that he had the experience that the guys just flowed together. Same thing if you're an off-duty officer. Same thing if you're a citizen defender, you're a concealed weapons holder. It's not very complicated. As we've said 37 times already in this
Right.
show, you just go to where the shooting is and you put the person down. And something you said was really important, Stephen. You can't render aid while the shooting is going on. That includes fire rescue, EMS, paramedics. They can't come in. They are forbidden from coming in. They're unarmed medics. They're not trained to deal in this sort of environment. So it's your job as LE, or even as a private defender, it's your job as someone who's trained to use a firearm to make that scene safe enough that those guys can then come in and do what it is they have to do. And every second that you hesitate, every minute that you hem and haw, or your chief or whoever it is hems and haws and doesn't let you do that important part of the work, the longer it is till they get in. Because as soon as the person's down, they still don't rush right in. You still got to clear the rest of the building, got to make sure there's no other shooters, there's no IEDs, whatever. So
Right.
getting to him, that's really just step one. That's just step one. There's a lot more steps to it after that.